All right. Thank you so much to everybody who's joining us. I see the attendee count kicking up, but I'll go ahead and kick us off here. So welcome everyone to our annual Inno on Fire celebration, formerly known as 50 on Fire for those of you who have been following BostInno for a long time. My name is Rowan Walrath and I'm the Associate Editor of BostInno. We are so bummed that we can't celebrate in person this year because it's always a blast, but we are thrilled and grateful to have the opportunity to celebrate virtually. And we're going to keep all the pomp and circumstance that we normally would on your screen. Before we get rolling, I know we have some folks who are joining a BostInno event for the first time. If you're not familiar with us, BostInno is a news and events platform dedicated to covering local innovation and connecting the innovators who are making things happen. We do that in a couple of ways. First and foremost is The Beat, which is a newsletter that I curate and write that goes out every weekday. We use that to introduce you to new startups, cover funding and M&A news, highlight major personnel moves, showcase insights from the community, and more. You can sign up for The Beat by going to BostInno.com, where you'll also find original coverage on Boston's startup and tech ecosystem. Now, BostInno has been around for about 11 years. We are part of a growing network of sites called American Inno, currently in 14 markets. And in each of those markets, American Inno is committed to supporting local innovation. And of course, we also support the ecosystem through events like this one. Now, in a few minutes, we're going to talk with some of the founders on this year's Inno on Fire list of honorees. Before we do that, I want to give a little bit more background on what exactly Inno on Fire is and why you're all here today. In the last decade since Inno's official launch, we've been working to showcase the people, companies, and trends that are helping transform Boston and the Northeast ecosystem into an innovation and startup hub. Earlier this fall, we asked our audience to submit nominations for our Inno on Fire awards. From the list of nominees, we pulled together Inno on Fire. If you didn't see the announcement, you can go to BostInno.com or check out the link we just dropped in the chat. You can see that in your GoToWebinar attendee panel. This afternoon, we're here to talk to several founders about how their companies have made an impact in the last year and hear their advice to others. We're also going to unveil the 2020 Blazer winners at the end of the event. And yes, it does come with an actual red blazer jacket. Now, Inno Blazer is a special designation given to the top companies or people trailblazing new paths in their category and industry, aka the hottest in their categories. The Blazer winners were selected by an esteemed panel of local judges. They truly stand out in the innovation community. The judges this year were myself, Doug Banks, executive editor of our sister publication, the Boston Business Journal, Vivjan Murto at Hyperplane Venture Capital, Kyle Gross at First Republic Bank, and Sarah Hodges at Pillar VC. Thank you all so much for giving a couple minutes of your time this year. Now, before we kick things off, I want to thank our Inno on Fire sponsors. Without their support, this event would not be possible. Amica, with more than a century of business know-how to their name, Amica is the oldest mutual insurer of automobiles in the country. They also offer home, marine, personal umbrella liability, and life insurance products. Our next sponsor is Poppin. They believe that everyone, everywhere, deserves to work happy. You can explore their innovative office furniture. Last but not least is the Rue Gilt Group. Rue Gilt Group is the premier off-price e-commerce portfolio company, connecting more than 35 million members with coveted designers and in-demand labels at an exceptional value. Explore their brands Rue La La, Gilt, and Simon Shop premium outlets. Please take a few moments to check out our sponsors as they're invested in and want to support the local innovation and tech community. Our 2020 class of Inno on Fire honorees ranges in size, industry, age, and stage, but they're all having their moments in different ways. They're sizzling with new funding and rising revenue. They're on the heels of entries and exits and pivots during a particularly difficult period. I have to acknowledge that COVID-19 challenged these ventures, threatened their futures, and made growth that much harder. For some, the pandemic created opportunity, and for others, it issued a major test that these players have passed. We're going to hear from some of these honorees just a few moments from now. We hope that you enjoy Inno on Fire as an opportunity to look back on what these amazing people and startups have accomplished over the last year. We also hope you look forward to the projects and endeavors that they're working on for the future. All right, so we've got some amazing entrepreneurs and innovators joining us today. We're going to kick things off with a fireside chat with Pat Kinsel, the founder and CEO of Notarize.
How's it going?
Hi, welcome.
Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So just by way of background, Notarize was part of our 2018 50 on Fire. This year, we're honoring the startup in our alumni category. And Pat, your remote notarization software has really kicked off as everything has gone remote. This March, when it was the longest month of all time, and we were all dealing with pivot after pivot, you managed to close a $35 million Series C round, and you also experienced a 400% growth rate in a 90-day period. People were beginning to need to do things remotely, but you saw that trend before it became a trend. What does it feel like to be at the forefront right now?
It's exhausting. It's been an exciting year. I mean, I want to acknowledge it's been a really challenging year, for everyone, myself, personally, our team. But it's been exciting for us. I mean, we, for years, have been fighting to bring our service to market. And I think a thing a lot of people don't appreciate is an online notarization doesn't occur for fun. It occurs as part of a business process. So buying a home, selling a car, opening a bank account, and ultimately those organizations or industries get a document notarized because they have to, right? So either it's a fraud reduction or it's something that's actually in the law. So for us to bring our service to market, we need to convince these industries that it's safe, that it's effective, that it's legal. We may have to change policy. And so that's all accelerated this year because of COVID, and we've been able to enter a lot of new markets. But that requires changing our service, winning new customers, coordinating with regulators. So it's been a long and exciting year. But I just want to, as a quick plug, I got to say, Poppin, I love Poppin. It's one of your sponsors. People listening out there, eventually when you've got to get back to build desks, I'm a huge, huge fan. So excited to see them as one of your sponsors.
Awesome. So I want to get into some of those industries you talked about. I mean, real estate, wills and trusts, all of those are industries that have traditionally operated in really analog ways. Do you think that the pandemic is going to accelerate their transition to digital?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, if you have to go get a document notarized or sign something in person, it's for a reason historically, right? There is a law or a requirement that you've got to go and do that. And a lot of those policies have now permanently changed. And historically, as a company, we've only ever lost one customer, and it's because they went out of business. And as people, if you just think about it, you're trying to, one of the things I say is if you get a document notarized, it's a horrible experience, right? You've got to leave work or home and go find someone and disrupt your life. Imagine being an organization who has to manage that process thousands or tens of thousands of times, and your whole organization relies upon it. And that experience of calling your customers, hey, where's that form? Where's that form? Where's that form? And suddenly it's entirely automated with complete visibility and no errors and a much better customer experience. People don't go back, right? And so I think one of our big challenges as a company historically was getting people to try it, right? And getting people to believe that it was legal. And with COVID, a lot more people have tried it, and a lot more industries, organizations have come out and clarified their position that it's legal. And so we're confident, and also, a lot of our customers sign multi-year enterprise deals. So, we're really excited about the future.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear, especially now. One of the things that has struck me about Notarize is you're really looking to bring people in, it seems. You've onboarded thousands of notaries this year, and you recently launched Notarize for Business, which allows businesses to bring their own notaries onto the platform. Can you tell me more about that kind of open mindset that you've employed?
Yeah, it wasn't always that way. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about why it's shifted. And
please.
Yeah, so when we launched as a company, again, very highly, scrutinized service. So a lot of regulators and compliance attorneys and whatnot, very focused on whether this was legal and valid. And so we wanted a lot of control, right? And we wanted to get it right. And the product wasn't always capable of managing the complexity itself. And so we manage that with, people and process, right? But as the platform's gotten better, we've been more confident in opening it up. And additionally, as things have accelerated, honestly, at Notarize, we're like masters of weird forms, right? We constantly see strange things come through the platform and then realize it turns out in Florida, if you want to get a tattoo as a kid, you need your parents to notarize an authorization, right? And on and on and on. And if you're in Montana, you have a double proxy wedding, it's a notarized form, right? It's just endless, the use cases that we see. But the real opportunity is to go industry by industry and go deep, right? And to really understand how in auto we can transform this process, or in real estate we can transform this process. And we realized that we can't become experts in every single category. And so we want to partner, right? And we want to find people that can embed us into their workflow, can bring their domain expertise to bear on how best to bring the solution to market. And that's been true with notaries. There are different notaries with different skill sets. Some have their own books of business. It's true with platforms. We recently partnered with Adobe. We've got partnerships with Dropbox and other companies like that. And then in real estate, all the software for title agents and whatnot are partners. And so we are very focused on distribution as a business right now and opening the platform so that we can go deep, and we can really change business process.
100%. Do you think, when was that pivot made for you? Was that also this year?
Yeah, all in a 6-week period. Yeah. When COVID hit for us, one of the panelists later commented he tried to use the service in late March and waited for hours. And so it's kind of an obvious statement when said out loud, but we need a notary to serve every customer. And we didn't have enough, and the volume was going up and up and up. And so rather than just getting better, at onboarding notaries, we decided we had to make it self-serve. And so with that really opened up a lot of other opportunities for us. Once a notary can sign up, onboard themselves, manage their own book of clients, it becomes easier to start to change the way we serve, various industries and clients. It makes it easier for us to partner with platforms. Previously, if we wanted to partner with a platform, we'd say, well, how many transactions do you want to send? And they'd say, well, we don't know, the volume that our customers will use. And we'd say, well, we have only so many notaries, right? We have to know. And now under a new model, it's much easier for us to, sign these partnerships, more rapidly onboard folks, create different teams that can serve different clients. So yeah, we completely changed our platform and our fulfillment model in about a 6-week period while all living at home and losing our minds. So.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that too, that living at home and working thing. So you guys were among the first Boston companies to go completely remote. What do you think the future of office work is going to look like? For your team as well as perhaps more generally.
Yeah, we went home early because it seemed like the right thing to do. Honestly, it wasn't that complicated of a decision. We have no essential reason to be in the office besides liking each other and enjoying collaborating, right? So it seemed easy for us to decide to go home and be safe and to be cautious. And so we've always said that we want to be cautious and we will make decisions kind of first in that regard. In terms of how it's gone, I think we're very lucky in that pre-COVID we had an office in Boston, an office in Virginia, and an office in Texas, and a small number of remote employees. And so we had already really invested in some of the communications, tools and practices. So, every company meeting being recorded so people could watch, on off hours and time zones and things like that. And we have different roles within the company. Some people are fulfilling transactions. They can't leave to go to a meeting, right? So when we communicate, we need to be explicit, it needs to be recorded. So we thought we were in a good position to do it. And I think it was a pretty smooth transition for us. We then decided what's in our control, right? We can't control when we go back to the office, but what we can do is be very good at being remote and taking advantage of it. And so we decided we were going to really open the hiring lens. And so we've been hiring across the country now. We've got people in more states than I can list, and we've picked up some extraordinary talent as a result of that. Ultimately, we do plan to open our offices. I don't know when. Our current position is June. Let's hope we all get vaccinated before that. And we plan to have offices that are really focused on collaboration and flexibility for our team to decide if and when they want to use them. I also think that we're a national company now with customers everywhere, and there are remote first businesses. Previously, I'd point to Envision or someone like that, and what they have done is regional events, get-togethers, working sessions, things like that. Not only where headquarters is located, and that's definitely something that we want to do going forward, and to really balance, like, how do you have an amazing experience with remote that are in the office, but we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. When you do go back to the office, do you have any sense of what kind of safety measures you're going to be taking for your employees?
I mean, our plan now is to come back to the office when people are vaccinated, and that's less of
Yep.
a concern. I mean, we're in downtown Boston. It's a combination of people taking public transportation, frequenting the neighborhood and whatnot. And we just have decided to be, conservative. We pull the team, and everyone pretty unanimously wants the ability to come back into the office to some degree, right? Some people want the flexibility 2, 3, 4 days a week. Some people want to travel and come in and out. That's all cool. But also people say that they don't feel any pressure or urgency to do it. And my concern ultimately is that if we open the office to any extent, I don't want to create a dynamic where people feel pressured that they have to come. So we're not going to do that.
I love it. I love to hear that. Thank you so much for joining us, Pat. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, of course, anytime. And look forward to seeing everyone, hopefully in the summer or something like that. So
fingers crossed. Maybe there'll be a big summer tech bash.
Let's hope.
Maybe not, but we'll see.
I think I'm dropping right. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Pat. All right, cool. Now we are getting ever closer to announcing our Inno Blazers and rolling this year's Inno on Fire tape to showcase all of the winners. But before we do that, we're going to talk to a couple more wonderful entrepreneurs in this ecosystem. We have a phenomenal panel for you today. If y'all could kick your cameras on, we'll go ahead and get things rolling. Awesome. Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I'll start by kind of giving each of you a little introduction, and then we can go around the table and get things going. All right. So first we have Elizabeth O'Day of Olaris. Liz is the founder and CEO of this biopharmaceutical startup that has created a biomarkers of response platform to determine whether a patient will respond to certain drugs or treatments for certain types of diseases. Also joining us today is Karolina Starczak of Nutrimedy. Karolina is the CEO of this telehealth app and online platform that connects patients with registered dietitians who can offer guidance regardless of physical location, which is pretty key these days. We also have Zhang of Sqaudle. Lee is the founder and CEO of Sqaudle, which is a tech company whose applications streamline food safety and reduce costs for restaurants and food retailers. All right, I'll let each of you go around and just kind of say hello, and then we'll kick off into our questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Rowan. I'm Liz. I'm really looking forward to chatting today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Karolina. Great to be here today.
Awesome.
Hey, I'm Lee. Thanks, Rowan. Thanks again for the intro.
100%, and I love seeing all of y'all's setups. All right, and a reminder to our audience, immediately following this panel, we will also have a Q&A with all of our panelists. So as we're chatting, you can drop your questions in the question box on your GoToWebinar panel in the corner. All right, now all of y'all have managed to accomplish something truly incredible this year, which is blaze a path forward for your businesses and the Boston entrepreneurial ecosystem in spite of everything that 2020 has brought. What does it mean to you to be on fire this year?
I'm happy to go first, and I'm looking forward to the other panelist responses. But on fire in 2020 could mean a lot of things, because there were literally times when the world was on fire in some cases. So for me and for Olaris, being on fire really meant staying true to our core values. We have 3 beacons that guide us in everything that we do. And I found them particularly useful to sort of stay on course in 2020. This includes sort of being accountable to science, always striving for better, and being committed to bring, products of revolutionary impact forward. I think 2020 probably pressure tested everything for everyone, and it made us sort of reevaluate what was and was not important. But for myself and my team, like, we could lean on these values to help give us like purpose. And I think that's in part why we had our most successful and transformative or on fire year, because we were like fully able to commit that we've been given this kind of tremendous opportunity to make impact and to save lives, and we have the responsibility to kind of like work our butts off to do that. So, on fire in 2020, I think obviously can mean a lot to different folks, but for Olaris, it was, rolling up our sleeves, digging into the science, leaving no stone, no analysis undone, and being open to constantly improving, to constantly innovating, and making headway to sort of bring our products forward. So that's what 2020 on fire was for us.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what Liz said. With something like this, it can either bring you together or it can pull you apart, right? Because it's new, it's not something that you planned for. I don't think any of us were sitting down in 2019 and planning for this, right? And so it's like everything that you've put together with your team, everything you've thought through and spent so much time and effort on, it doesn't really matter anymore, right? Because everything has changed. And I think for us, it's the same thing. It's kind of blazing through that adversity, all these things, that the barriers that you maybe didn't even know were going to happen, right? Nobody plans for a pandemic. It's been about 100 years since we've had one. And so to look at that and say, okay, how can we be nimble? How can we get through it? I think in a way, like Liz said, right, it brings you together, but you also see how you can kind of respond to it. And you're like, if our team can get through this, we can get through anything.
Yeah, exactly. I think for us as well, I mean, so our company had been seeing tremendous growth prior to COVID. And luckily for us, our customer base has been extremely resilient. And so we've been able to maintain that tremendous growth during COVID, while trying to adapt quickly to all of these changing circumstances, and maintaining that growth. And so I think, really for us, it's being heads down and continuing to grow the team the way that we had over the last year.
100%. And Karolina, I liked the way you put it. Like, every plan that you made in 2019 just kind of got thrown out the window. There's no other reality. That's how things had to go. So you've outlined your goals. Obviously, everything changed. What for each of you has been the most significant pivot of this year?
I can go first if you want this time around. So for us, we have a kind of a multi-channel sales strategy. We work with hospitals, we work with pharma, med tech, and when we started seeing this happen, a lot of implementations that were about to move forward, everything froze right on the health system side, and especially because some of the health systems were in New York City. So that was really one of the areas that were hit the hardest, especially initially. And so we have to kind of think through, well, can we broaden the offering with what we have? Are there kind of components and functionality that already exists that maybe we can, create something a little bit newer and have just additional offerings for, potential customers, specifically in the pharma space? And we actually did that, and we did it in a pretty quick turnaround time. We took kind of some of the image recognition functionality that we have within our food log, and we developed a completely separate offering that can be used in decentralized clinical trials. Which is fantastic. And we came together, we kind of figured out what we were going to do it, and I think this week it's launching in the App Store.
Awesome. Congrats.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can go next. Yeah, so a lot of our customers are major multi-unit brands. So we work with McDonald's, Dunkin' brands, a lot of major brands with tens of thousands of locations worldwide. And a lot about what we do is helping streamline their operations and allow them to remotely manage their stores. And so as COVID happened and there were a lot of new safety requirements that were being put in place for our customers, we had to react really quickly and help our customers implement those new procedures. And so building out new tools, helping build out new COVID-19 checklists that we made available for free for all of our customers, and putting that into our tools and our systems so our customers could adapt more quickly. That's what really helped us focus as a team as well, in order to help our customers out.
Yeah, I'll pick up on a theme that I think I'm noticing here is, whether it's pivot or perhaps sort of expanding, but it seems like all of us probably took this as a chance where we had to like expand our portfolios or our offerings, and that was, very true for Olaris as well. As a biotech company, we were fortunate, to be deemed essential, so in some ways we could continue, business as usual. But of course, nothing about 2020 was business as usual, and managing getting into the lab, getting samples, getting sort of coordinating, getting time on equipment, all of these things that you used to take for granted, we had to really like coordinate and to be more thoughtful about, and that caused certain projects to be delayed, and but it also allowed us to sort of accelerate and expand in sort of into different areas. And if I had talked to you guys at 2019, Olaris was largely like a breast cancer company. But we're ending, 2020, having made progress in our breast cancer programs, but also expanding, into neuro and into immune response and other areas. So we use this opportunity, similar to everybody else on this, as a chance to, pivot, but maybe more like expand, what we can do.
So follow-up question for each of y'all to that. Do you think that in the future you're going to keep expanding into these new areas, or do you think that you'll kind of pivot back and focus on the things that you kind of had to put aside?
I would say, yeah. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but for us, definitely, because once I think what else has happened with the pandemic is that some of these things are more embraced than maybe they were before. Doing things virtually or in kind of a different way. And I think in a lot of cases, we've realized that, hey, it's not that bad to do it this way, right? There's a lot of benefits to it. So I think for us, we're definitely going to keep moving forward in this direction.
Yeah, same here.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll go first. Yeah. We've seen a lot of our customers as well having to change throughout the pandemic, and for instance, implementing new drive-through layouts, or implementing pickup and delivery for the first time, online delivery for the first time, and that's probably not going to end, right? So that's an acceleration of change rather than something that's short term. And so similarly for us, I think we're going to continue going after these new opportunities.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just echo similar here, right? Like I think this highlighted different needs that we can solve and how we can work with other people, so I think we'll continue this mix of focused but flexible, like moving forward.
Awesome.
Yeah,
please go ahead, Karolina.
I was going to add too that, in a way, if you work with larger organizations, this was such an opportunity for startups that can be so much more nimble, move so much quickly, to really kind of come in and almost save the day.
Yeah.
Totally.
And like, industries like healthcare, I'm sure, and food services, like potentially might be slow to change, but now like everyone was uncomfortable, right? And everybody like needed to change. So it created, I think, a lot of opportunity for companies and people who are willing to kind of step in and innovate like that.
And all of you have, to different degrees, worked with these larger, slower moving corporations. Do you think that decision makers at corporations are going to be turning to startups more?
I hope so.
My words as well. Yeah.
Well, to a certain extent, we all know so, right? We've been picking up business from these larger companies, and so I think it's maybe accelerating that pace of change. There's definitely members of these larger organizations that already know that startups have a lot to offer, and that they can be more nimble and create new solutions. And so I think there's going to be more of a focus on that in the near term future.
Awesome. Well, all remains to be seen, I suppose. We can only do so much speculating. Cool. I want to touch on something else here. As we all know, in many ways, Boston is at the forefront of innovation. The city is home to Moderna, for example, whose coronavirus vaccine might actually bring us out of the darkness. We have some of the best thinkers in tech, healthcare, and the systems that make them work, including, of course, all of y'all. We have top innovations even beyond our Inno and Fire winners, but that doesn't mean there's not more work to do to make this ecosystem better, especially in terms of inclusivity for people of color, for women, for entrepreneurs of different ages, and more. How, in each of your opinion, can leaders in the startup world also be leaders for change in these areas?
So maybe I can start here, and we have a pretty diverse panel here today as well. And so here at Sqaudle, we already have an incredibly diverse team from the very top to the bottom, and this is definitely an issue that's really important to me personally as well. So I'd say that besides seeing diversity and inclusion as an important value internally for the company and for building a place where people want to work at and they want to, they can feel like they belong. I think leaders should start thinking externally about how this can be a competitive advantage in the market and for business, right? So how do you better relate to your customers? And the U.S. is only becoming more and more diverse, and so it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, I'll pick up from there. I mean, I think this year we had multiple crises, right? We had the pandemic, we had climate change, we had economic, turmoil, and then we certainly had a lot of racial and unrest and things being brought to everybody's attention that need to be. So, I think we all in every industry have been kind of called to step up, and what we can do as leaders of organizations and also just as average individuals. So, similar to Lee, I think what we can all do is look at our staff. I'm super proud that we also have a very diverse team, and I think part of that is science knows no boundaries, right? And we're committed to find the best talent, so and give them the opportunities. I don't care what anybody looks like, right? I just want to bring those people together, but that's not the case everywhere, and I have to be kind of cognizant of that, and use my voice, whatever platform I've been given, to help kind of make people more aware of that and just call out look at your board. Is it all white dudes? Where are the ladies? Or where are the people, of color and things like that? And make sure that we're bringing that to attention, because I think that's what 2020 did for this issue. Is a lot of this, we kind of knew, but now everybody saw it every day of just, what a huge problem this is, and we all need to play our part in the solution. I literally just came from an amazing talk by Dr. Carlos Hoyt, who's a diversity and inclusion expert. And he put some great ideas in my head, and I think it's actually perfect for your question of what Boston can do, because he reiterated that race is a social construct, right? We made that up, and he challenged us to think about how we not just solve immediate downstream problems of making sure we have more diverse teams and more people are given opportunities, but how can we think about how we even talk about race and the racialization that happens. And he gave this great example that I'm probably going to butcher, but if you took a raccoon, a zebra, and some other striped animal, and just imagine we called them all stripies, how stupid that would be. And we tried to categorize them based on being stripies, and that's what we're doing with race. And I think that there's just so much opportunity potentially for Boston as leaders in biotech and leaders in innovation to kind of really tackle what is and what is not race, and what we need to do about it.
Yeah, definitely agreed. We have to really lead by example. And when you kind of think about what startups today are building, bits and pieces of what we're putting together are going to potentially end up affecting the population as a whole, right? That's the point is, whether you get acquired or you grow as a company, your innovation is going to affect the population one day, right, downstream. And if you're not really kind of taking into account different ideas, and different perspectives, you're kind of creating flawed solutions. And I think it just doesn't help the world overall.
Yeah, then your innovation might be a little bit short-lived, so to speak.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Right now, and in a business sense as well as a personal sense, what are each of you prioritizing as we head into next year?
So personally, a haircut, because it's probably been I think I've crossed the 1-year mark at this point. Better safe than sorry, right? And then in terms from a company perspective, right, to continue to grow, we have to finish up fundraising. So that's a huge priority for us. But I think we've just learned so much this year about, what we can do, how we can work together, how we can really get through anything. So we're really excited about 2021.
I think we've got a very similar plan, Karolina. So, I think like, what we've all probably heard, like, businesses go through these storming, forming, norming, stages. We called 2020, the theme was our performing year, right? Where we were kind of taking all the lessons that we had built up to date, and like now it was our chance to execute. And then, of course, 2020 happened, and we did a good job, and I am very proud of it. But 2020 was filled with such like uncertainty, from the pandemic to elections to like, markets, investors, and things like that, that it was actually really hard as a leader to plan, what your next day was, never mind your next 12 months. But I think like we're starting to kind of have that dust settled where, one, we've all been through this crazy thing together. And so I have like confidence we can get through anything, but we can actually now put together, a clear plan and march with focus, into executing those goals, moving our products forward, expanding our opportunities, closing some financing, and growing our team. I will put a call out there. Olaris has 5 open recs, so we are hiring for everything. So if anybody is looking for a cool company to work for, give me a holler.
Awesome. Yeah, and just like Liz, I think over the last few months, we really listen. We try to listen as much to our customers as possible, and over the last few months, it's really been about, hey, what's going to happen in the next month or maybe even the next week, right, from our customers' perspective. And we're starting to see now, as the year ends, that a lot of our customers are now looking forward to the next quarter and the next half a year and the next year. And that's helping us also prioritize what we want to work on for 2021. And we're definitely hearing, a lot more feedback around, hey, how are we going to reopen? And a lot of new brands that we haven't spoken to in the future are telling us, hey, we're planning on reopening, or we're creating a plan to reopen mid next year, and these solutions that you're building can be really useful for us. And so it's kind of preparing ourselves also for the growth next year, and while still taking care of the house and making sure everything is smooth for 2020.
100%. And it's interesting. I mean, it almost feels strange to me that I even posed that question to y'all, because as we saw, last year's plans were thrown out the window, and we've been kind of taking things day by day, week by week, month by month. Does it feel strange to be able, or even to think about taking a long view now?
It does, but I feel like it's also hopeful, right? Like you want to believe that. I mean, when you think about how quickly we were able to deliver, as Massachusetts, not us, it's specifically deliver a vaccine and really kind of, think about recovery and keep pushing forward. I think, you have to have that hope that you can, again, look at things kind of from a long-term perspective, right? And, know that, hey, if something else happens and things are unexpected, we've been through it once, we can do it again. And, I think if anything, it kind of removes some of that fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the whole startup methodology is to plan for the future and then prepare to get punched in the face. And so I think it isn't anything different than I think what we're all used to already. It's making sure that you have a good plan for the future and be prepared for the worst, just in case.
I can't say it better than the punch in the face analogy.
Yeah, that's great. Quite an image. Cool. Before I ask my next question, I do want to remind our audience members that we do have a Q&A portion. So if you want to drop your questions in the question box so we can get that rolling in a couple minutes here, please do so. You can ask an individual panelist any question you want. You can ask us to go around the horn. Whatever you want to learn, we are here for you. All right, and with that in mind, I want to ask each of you, what predictions do you have for how the world of work as a whole is going to change next year and beyond?
I think it's changed, like, potentially forever, and how we do business, right? Prior to the pandemic, Olaris had 0 work from home culture, and if anything, like, I was adamantly against it. I thought as startups, you need to be together, and that's how like sparks and ideas happen and good bonds form. But obviously we had to shift, when the pandemic came crashing down on our door. But the truth is, like, our productivity increased, and I think many people have seen that, and those ideas and those bonds continue to sort of build and sort of in different ways, but they still continue to happen. And so for me, it really changed how much importance I think for other leaders of like office work will have in the future. And, Olaris is growing, as I said, so we're looking, at new space. And as I was picking out like real estate options, I never took into account that like my full staff would ever be there at any single moment in time, which is a different thought that I would have had, a year ago, right? Because I think this showed us, how teams can work remotely and get things done. But it also did highlight the importance of having, opportunities to kind of come together and how much, we miss sort of just seeing each other. Like it would be such an exciting moment. It's like, oh my God, I saw Natalie in real life today, and how important that was for team bonding. So I think things have changed where there'll probably be more, flexibility, location, big offices, not sure, co-working space, we'll see what that looks like. But I think it also highlighted like some fundamentals that like we really want to hold on to, and that's like that human contact.
Yeah, I think so. To a certain extent, like Liz said, some things have changed forever. I don't know when the last time was when I actually placed a regular phone call. I think I've been on Zoom. I think I've been on Zoom like 24/7. And then on the other hand, there's definitely I think like Pat mentioned earlier in his chat, there's this feeling that you don't want to create a division between the folks who want to go into the office and those who are remote. And I think that's going to be a challenging transition for a lot of companies, going from some fully in-person businesses to completely remote, and now going back to this kind of hybrid approach. I think that's going to be kind of messy, and I think everyone's going to have to be really aware of how that could create problems. And we're going to be thinking about that for sure. But I think ultimately we're going to be able to get the best of both worlds. Like Liz and Olaris and Nutrimedy, Sqaudle is growing as well. We decided to start hiring remotely as soon as the pandemic happened. Luckily, similar to Pat as well, we had members of the team that were already remote, and we already had set up some services and tools that we just continued to use once everyone was remote, and that's really helped us out. But moving forward, we're probably going to keep that up. We're going to continue to hire remotely across the U.S. and potentially internationally as well, and just trying to be aware of how that might cause friction.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were big supporters of remote work on our end as well, and it is kind of odd. Like for example, we closed our the first customer ever where we didn't meet in person, right, prior to like finalizing the contract, which is so odd to have never actually met these individuals outside of a Zoom call. And so it is a little bit of an adjustment, like the little things that you maybe took for granted prior to this. And in the world of healthcare, I think there's just been such a difference in how it's accelerated, just remote methods of working, of seeing patients, of working with patients. I think we were probably fairly slow as a whole in terms of an industry, right, to adopt some of these things. And it's really, I think everyone's much more open to it because we've had to do it. But I do feel that we all miss a little bit of that human social interaction. And to, Lee's point, how do you kind of blend that in a way where you don't make things more messy than they need to be, right? Because you do have to have certain processes in place, especially with remote work. It takes, I think, a whole different level of organization to make everything come together well. But yeah, it's gonna be a different world, and I think I'm excited about it because as we talk about diversity and inclusion, there's no better way to include talent from everywhere, right? If you no longer depend on somebody to come into the office, maybe they have young kids at home, or for other reasons it's really hard for them to commute in. You can kind of remove some of those barriers and bring people in with amazing ideas.
Yeah, that's a great point, Karolina. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, and Lee, I love your comment about you don't know how when you last placed an actual phone call, because I feel like I keep trying to head that problem off by telling people, call me directly. Here is my number. Like, don't send me a Zoom link. I'm just tired, I really am. I think
Yep.
all of us are a little bit.
Yeah.
Which leads me into my next question. What are you kind of holding on to going into next year? What brings you hope? What gives you strength? And what is helping you as a startup leader cement your company in this ecosystem and cement Boston as this beacon of innovation that we've kind of been?
Mm. Yeah, I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently, and I'm part of a bunch of nonprofits, and we've been helping a lot of entrepreneurs, both across Boston and the rest of the U.S. as well. And I think as we are being successful through 2020, I think it's really important to give back to the community as well, and help others in the same way that you might have been helped in the past. And I'm hopeful that moving into 2021, we're going to have a lot more success stories. Just like we've are kind of a success story in 2020. I hope that there's more companies that are taking advantage of the opportunities that are available, and especially here in Boston too. I'm not scared for the future of Boston at all. I think that we have great universities, great talent, great access to investors and advisors, great companies and other founders to learn from. And I think that's just going to continue to happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like because of what's been going on, it's almost, when you're in this role, right, you're rushing around, you're going from one task to the next, you're always so busy. And with 2020, it almost allowed me to have a little bit more time to reach out and talk to other founders more frequently and share those stories and come together and say, how can we help each other? Like take a moment and out of your day and say, can we help make an introduction, or can they do that for you? And I think that, everybody, in a way, I think we all had kind of like blinders on, right? Here's where I need to go. Here's the next milestone. And there wasn't maybe as much focus on sort of how are we supporting one another? And I hope that really continues into 2021.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. I mean, I grew up in Boston, or right outside of Boston in Braintree, and then I did my undergrad at Boston College, and just across the pond at University of Cambridge, and then came back to Harvard for my PhD. So like Boston, like, through and through. And I gotta say, like, I've never been more grateful to be from Boston than like this year. I think like the science, the medicine, like the leaders we have, like really just in this crazy world, like made me feel like secure, right? And I think that's something that Boston, startups ecosystem also like offers to people like all of us, on the call here. And so, I've noticed that sense of camaraderie, Karolina, that you're talking about, just, amped up, like somebody gave it a Red Bull, everybody knows everybody's house is on fire. And so what can we do, to help you put that out and to be there for one another. But I think, Lee, like you said, it also has instilled in me like this deep sense of like gratitude, and how do I help others that are starting out on this journey, right? And so I think that's something that, we're all conscious of, and making sure we can, do what we can to help.
Awesome. Go Eagles, another BC grad over here.
Right.
Love it. All right. With that, I think we're going to go ahead and move into our audience Q&A. If anyone wants to go ahead and continue dropping in questions, we'll have time for several before we roll our Blazer video, which I'm super excited about. I had a chance to see it yesterday, and it is very hot. All right. First question. How are you handling hiring with the uncertainty in the marketplace?
So, I mean, we're hiring crazy right now. So I'm living this right at this very moment. So it's a really interesting world where there are some segments of the, the working world that are suffering, and then there's other places like biotech where things are on fire, right? And there's actually quite a lot of demand and competition. So, we just have to be like really thoughtful about it, right? There's lots of people out there, but like when we hire, we really judge them not just for their skills, but for their passion and their ability to kind of fit into those like Olaris core values, that I talked about there. And because I think that works both ways, I think like when we hire people, we're not only like looking for them to help us, but for us to help them as well. And only when you have that like good match does it tend to work out. And so, there's both like an abundance of people out there right now, unfortunately because of the economic downturn, but then there's also like competition, I think, to find the right people. So it takes, I don't know, a long time, and I think it should be a very thoughtful process.
One thing I'll add too is that I think that in a way it's almost helped us kind of look at, who might be a good fit without maybe having the exact background we're looking for, right? Because there was so much, like Liz said, so much talent that was let go because of the industry they were in, and maybe there's sort of certain skill sets that really translate well into what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, even the hiring process, right? Having to do that remotely versus meeting somebody in person, it is very different. But it's doable. We've done it. We're going to continue to do it. But again, right, you're expanding kind of your potential applicant pool or talent pool when you're looking past, a certain region, right? Maybe not everybody wants to commute to a certain location, but if you don't need them to come in every single day, now you can really kind of expand that and say, who's the best fit, right? Who can we bring into the team and who's a really good culture fit for us?
Yeah, and I really think it has to do with the type of role that you're trying to fill as well. So I think if it's traditionally a role that can work well remotely, then I think right now is a great time to hire, and the pool has only increased. But if it involves in-person salespeople, then I think it's going to be a challenge right now, and taking flights and having the opportunities available for them. And so I think I wouldn't say that it's all in all, it's probably positive for us as well. As we're hiring too, where we have access to a larger applicant pool, and going through the remote virtual interview process, I think has been a learning process, but I think it's worked out for us as well.
Now that transitions really nicely into the next audience question, which is actually a follow-up. Are you hiring long distance remote right now?
Yes.
We aren't at the moment, but we probably will be in 2021.
And for us, it depends on the role, I would say. We have a lab component, which actually does require coming into the lab. So that is a local hire. But yeah, when the pandemic happened, I had employees ask, can I go move down to Maryland or move wherever? And I was like, I don't care, so long as you can move to Timbuktu, so long as you get your work done, right? And so I think this idea, as Lee, you said, it's kind of expanding the potential network. And Karolina, I think you said it as well.
So Liz, for those local hires, would you, for example, hire someone who's based in Maryland right now, but can move back up to Boston in a couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, so we do offer relocation as part of our comp package, because again, for us to be successful, we need the best people. And I think Boston is great and has a lot of those smart people, right? You got to be able to kind of, bring together kind of the people that have the skill sets for the gaps that you're trying to fill. So for sure, we have moved people from all over the world actually to come to Olaris. So sponsoring visas, doing other things as well.
Awesome. All right, next question. I love this. It's very speculative. The pandemic ends tomorrow. What has changed forever for you?
Wow. It's a really good question.
I would say the idea of a daily commute into an office, right? I spent quite a long time in other roles doing that, and you realize just how much time that eats up. And do you always need to be in that office, right? Is it something that you have to do 5 days a week just because we've always done it that way? So I think that just that idea, and you think about, the environmental impact, right? The stress impact on your employees, those rigid kind of hours, is that something that we necessarily have to continue, or is it something that, we kind of let that go and we change and we adapt?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what we talked about. My view of office work has forever kind of changed, and what needs to get done in the office, from actual location to maybe even hours and things like that, I think are different now, and for the better. So
I'm in total agreement, and I almost want to say that there's the opposite effect too, which is realizing when you need to take a break, right? And I think during the pandemic, everyone has seen their hours go from 9 to 11 to 12 hours on Zoom. And I think for the first time, I'm realizing, okay, maybe it's nice to have that commute just so that you can think about other things and not be on the phone all the time. And so, how do we build that into the culture of the business so that we can accommodate people who are working remotely as well as in the office?
Yeah.
Lee, I totally agree with you. I really miss my commute, and my commute was like less than half an hour. So bear that in mind. Like, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But I do miss having that time built in to like just sit and be, and also like get outside, even if it's just for a couple of minutes. I think I've spent like 20 minutes outside this week, and it's Thursday evening. So that's definitely a risk.
But it is November or December in Boston, so
I know.
20 minutes outside.
That's what I keep telling myself. Right, we have one more audience question, and then I think we're going to go ahead and get into our video, which I'm super pumped for.
Awesome.
All right. The asker here wants to know if you have suggestions for policy or regulations changes based on the new business environment.
I'm like searching for clarification. They like meaning like the social distance that we've embraced now and things like that, or just sort of this new world that we're all living in.
We have a follow-up from the asker that is simply laws. So I'm thinking, you know, what kinds of policies for businesses specifically, especially I'm thinking coming into the new administration in January.
That's a tough one.
I can't think of any laws. Yeah, I mean, I think laws is maybe on. It's almost too restrictive in terms of what I would like to see, but it's maybe sort of related. I think over the last year or so, it's been really difficult to, or I think it's especially as everyone's been working from home remotely and kind of in their own bubbles. I think it's become challenging to talk about issues that don't fit the bubble of someone else. And I think that in general, this is not a regulation or a law issue. I think this is just a human issue. I would love to see people more into having conversations about whatever topic they want to talk about, and being able to talk about both sides and see the other person when they're having those conversations. And I think in general that will help not just business but personal relationships everywhere.
Yeah, I would also say too that potentially thinking through, like, again, not maybe laws but some policies around work-life balance, because you're right. When you're working remotely, one of the hardest things is like turning it off, right? Because you're always at work in a way. And like Rowan mentioned, sometimes you like 3 days later, like, wait, I haven't stepped outside because I've just been working nonstop. And I think you almost have to say, well, that's okay maybe for us in a way because we have a little bit more autonomy of our schedule. But what about for individuals who don't? And how do they kind of balance everything with with family, with other responsibilities? And we want to make sure that they feel like there's a little bit of time that's protected, that they're they don't have to feel that tension of like, I need to work all the time.
Yeah, I think I agree with everybody. Laws feels extreme to me, but I do think like policies and maybe like challenges as leaders can be put in place to kind of take care of our people. And I think some of that comes to this like I don't know, keep safe spaces to talk about stuff, and also making sure that people get breaks. One thing we did this year was implement like company-wide vacations, because we realized people were working like nonstop, and we have unlimited vacation, and nobody took a vacation from March to July, right? And that's not sustainable, right? So making sure that like we have these policies in place to kind of check on people and almost force function to help take care of people or help them take care of themselves.
I love that. Those are very compassionate answers. All right, I think we're at 5 o'clock. So thank you all so much for joining us, and congratulations again for being Inno on Fire honorees this year. Really appreciate you being on this panel and offering your insights.
Well, thank you. Thank you guys. It was great chatting with everyone.
Thank you.
All right, let's roll. All right. I'm going to imagine we're all at Artists for Humanity right now, cheering and drinking and having a grand old time. I'm just going to imagine all of you cheering at home, and I'll cheer right along with you. Congratulations to our Blazers. In case you missed any part of that video, our Blazer in the food and ag tech category was Sqaudle. Congratulations to Lee and his team. In security tech, Evolve Technology. In software, Luminoso. In clean tech and green tech, Radical Plastics. In impact investors, One Way Ventures. In ecosystem supporters, the Massachusetts Biotechnology Council, more commonly known as MassBio. In biotech, Olaris Therapeutics. In health tech and med tech, PatientPing. In early stage, Voda.ai. In other or InnoPix, Alice. And in our alumni category, Notarize. Congratulations to all of our winners, and a special congratulations to our Blazers. Thank you all so much for being here today. Make sure you go to BostInno.com tomorrow for a recap of this event. We have recorded this, so you'll also be able to experience the magic again and share it with your friends who weren't able to come tonight. While you're at BostInno.com, if you're not already subscribed, please sign up for The Beat, and we will be in your inboxes tomorrow afternoon. Thank you again to our sponsors, Amica, Poppin, and Rugilt Group, without whom tonight would not have been possible. Thank you so much. Good night.